We start by seeing a woman emerging from a river and carefully looking toward the shore and into the forest. She quickly exits the water and discovers that she has expended all the ammunition in her weapon. Still frightened, she runs and enters the forest. Meanwhile, somewhere in the woods, we see a hunter and a guide searching for something, following the tracks left along the way. Their names are Matthias and Marcia, an ex-runner who quit athletics due to a leg problem. The hunt is for a deer, and soon the hunter shoots, but misses the shot. Matthias falls next, and after lifting his partner, he notices he was carrying a sealed letter, which he quickly takes back and says that it is worth much more than their lives, claiming to be a businessman. They continue the search and find more blood marks, likely from the animal they are hunting. The man says that he is hunting an animal that will only serve as food for the dog. He then hands a weapon to Marcia and returns on the path they came, while she continues the search. Marcia walks a little distance and finds the injured animal, but hesitates to finish it off. However, another hunter named Leo arrives, and as a mercy sign, ends the animal's suffering. He says the hunt is over and asks her to return with him. Upon arriving at the lodge and camp for sport hunters, she discovers that the hunter Matthias has fallen ill and needed to be rescued. Shortly after, we learn that the chief Mox is not pleased with Marcia for leaving one of his clients alone. She regrets it but asserts that she needs the money from the job. However, Mox says that it is her last day as a guide for hunters. After the reprimand, Marcia receives a call from the hospital stating that her appointment is scheduled for the start of the coming week. However, she discovers that her health insurance does not exist, so they cannot cover the surgery she needs on her leg. She becomes frustrated, but looking at the letter in Matthias's jacket, she thinks of something. Quickly, she takes the jacket and starts back along the path. On the road cutting through the forest, she sees a large ancient castle but does not know who lives there. Along the way, she calls the hospital, asking them to hold her appointment, as she is managing to get the money for her treatment, but the call has noise and interference before dropping. The weather is rainy when she decides to check the letter she stole. This ends up capturing her attention and makes her inattentive on the road. Suddenly, the woman from earlier appears in the middle of the road, and with no time to react, Marcia accidentally runs over the stranger. Horrified by what happened, she exits the vehicle and tries to help the woman named Silva, who starts talking strangely. She says that it isn't safe there, as the competition isn't over. Marcia does not understand, but hears whispers and low screams coming from the depths of the forest. Unbeknownst to her, something swift is tracking the woman. Marcia offers Matthias's coat to the woman, and as soon as both are inside the car, a humanoid creature approaches the vehicle. Marcia quickly starts the car and accelerates. However, the creature is fast and jumps on the car, causing the injured Silva to scream in fear. Marcia slams on the brakes and knocks the ferocious being off the front. The thunderstorm knocks down a tree and forces Marcia to speed backward, causing her to veer off the road and get the vehicle stuck in the mud. For a moment, the situation seems calm, but the creature appears and breaks the car window, dragging Silva along with the coat into the forest. Marcia is stunned, not knowing what happened. Suddenly, another creature appears at her side and attempts to attack her. Desperate, she exits the car and runs down the road. However, a train starts passing, blocking the road and forcing Marcia to enter the forest. Alarmed by what is pursuing her and unaware of what kind of creature it is, she runs toward the train tracks, hurriedly trying to cross before the train passes and blocks the way again. Being very lucky, she passes in time to escape the creature, which ends up being crushed by the locomotive. Marcia does not stop and continues running as she hears more screams from new creatures. She quickly climbs a slope and soon sees several creatures in black cloaks below, but they do not continue the chase after Marcia. Fortunately, she spots a nearby village and heads toward it. Later, it is revealed that she called the police officer Esther to investigate the previous attack, claiming that something or someone dragged the woman into the forest. However, Esther does not pay much attention and says that Marcia will spend the night in Bahnhof, the nearby town, as the road cleaners will only come by the beginning of the week. While investigating her car, the police officer finds syringes and believes that Marcia has been using hallucinogens, not truly knowing what happened. Marcia insists that Officer Esther investigate the area, but she states that the property is private and belongs to a countess. Esther guides Marcia to the town, and soon after, we see Marcia taking the vehicle for repairs. The mechanic Laura states that the car's axle broke and it will take effort to repair, besides being expensive. However, she offers a proposal to buy the vehicle from her, and Esther suggests that she could take a train back home. Then, Marcia is taken to the station, where she will wait for the locomotive's passage. She is still holding the gun given to her by Mateus, in case she needs to use it in this unknown place. Fortunately, the locomotive soon approaches, and she quickly boards. However, before entering, she receives a call from Mr. Mateus, who demands what she stole from him. He wants her to be faithful in returning it, as he has many qualities to get what he desires. Soon we see that he injured Mox to get information about Marcia. At this moment, two women disembark from the train and head toward a vehicle that is waiting for them, and after entering, they drive away. Due to the threats, Marcia prefers to stay in town and does not board the train, deciding to search for Silva, who was using the coat with the letter. She sees a bicycle and a map of the area, and soon heads to the site of the accident. Unafraid of the darkness of the forest and wanting to find the kidnapped woman, Marcia enters the woods. She follows the trail and encounters a wall of one of the countess's properties, noticing that there are bloodstains there. Without reflecting on what may happen, she decides to climb the wall. As she climbs, she finds herself in a maze of plants and soon enters the estate, finding her way inside. She heads to the stables and finds an old man working with the horse saddles, which are dirty and trickling with blood. The old man does not notice the woman and soon enters a door that leads to the basement. Marcia follows him, continuing to observe him. After the man moves away, she enters where he exited and finds a wine cellar. However, she discovers what she shouldn't. Inside a compartment, she comes across the wounded body of Silva, hanging by hooks and chains. She becomes terrified at the scene, but approaches the woman and ends up seeing a tattoo on her back, which she commits to memory. Suddenly, the woman reveals herself to be alive, and soon Marcia tries to help her. She frees Silva from the restraints, and as she falls to the floor, she notices the coat and the letter beside her. However, before she can get up and go retrieve them, a creature wearing a black cloak and hood appears. It attacks the two of them, finishes off Silva, and injures Marcia's hand, damaging her cell phone in the process. Thinking quickly, Marcia grabs her weapon and shoots at the creature, fleeing from the compartment. She moves through another underground room and reaches the exit. It is already morning, and she escapes from another location near the river. She sees a fisherman and waves to the man, but he does not pay attention. Turning around, she sees the dark creature running toward her. She pleads for the creature to stop, but when she is ignored, she shoots at it. Marcia approaches and pulls back the hood of her oppressor, soon discovering it is just a beautiful woman. However, this woman reveals herself to be a fierce, vampiric creature and grabs Marcia by the neck. To escape death, Marcia shoots the creature's body and is knocked to the ground. She grabs the vampire's sword and plunges it into the monster's chest, running away from there. The scene from the beginning seems to repeat itself as Marcia swims through the river toward the fisherman while the creature is still alive. Quickly, the vampire follows along the riverbed, but before reaching her prey, Marcia climbs into the fisherman's boat. Desperate, she starts the motor and does not hear the man talking about fishing traps. Consequently, it isn't long before Marcia forces the propellers to get stuck in the traps. Fearing the creature, she jumps into the water to free the propellers, but at that moment, she comes face to face with a dead woman's body. The fisherman starts the motor, and suddenly, the vampire approaches Marcia. She shoots and grabs onto the traps stuck to the boat, being dragged along with them. Soon, the engine starts to malfunction again, and then Josh pulls the strange woman from the water. She thanks him for the favor and heads for the countess's castle, where she meets Mrs. Vani, the castle's administrator, who is talking to Officer Esther. Marcia says she found the woman and has more things to tell about the previous night, but Vani offers her care. However, Marcia declines and shows her hand wound. She says that the countess seems to have lunatics in her properties who hunt people and kill them. However, she is warned that the countess has been found dead. After the brief conversation, Marcia is taken to be treated by a physician, but she is surprised to notice that the woman named Helena resembles the creature that attacked her. After being treated, Marcia is suspicious of the castle's residents and asks Esther to check the compartment where she found Silva. This seemingly makes Helena attentive to the accusation. Minutes later, when they arrive there, they find only a deer hanging to serve as food. Marcia is not satisfied with the lack of perception regarding the occurrences on Esther's part, and when finding a part of her cell phone with bloodstains, says that it will serve as proof. However, Esther only says that the proof she has is that Marcia invaded a private property and that this could lead to arrest. However, Vani says that it is not necessary and offers the castle's quarters for the wounded to recover in the best way possible. Fearful of staying there, Marcia decides to have Esther take her out of the property. Inside the vehicle, she takes her pills, which Esther believes may be the reason Marcia has hallucinations. On the way, the police officer decides to take a shortcut, which leaves Marcia confused. They encounter Josh and stop the cruiser so that the man can confirm the events at the lake as proof. But he says he only pulled the woman from the water, and as a reward had his boat damaged. Esther asks Marcia to follow her, but seeing that the man did not tell what he really knows, she says she will stay. Josh agrees to take the woman to town, which the police officer accepts. Josh takes the new acquaintance to his cabin, which he inherited from his late uncle. He states that the less she talks to strangers, the better. Josh tells her that some in the hunting association believe that strange things happen on the countess's property. Josh warns that there is a lot of hunting in the area, but it is not just sport hunting. Marcia asks why they do not do anything, and Josh responds that they cannot get involved with the countess's people and that he will take her to catch the train soon. However, Marcia asks for internet access, and being kind, Josh takes her to a facility that occasionally comes to clean. Minutes later, while researching something related to the tattoo and the countess's family, she discovers an old photograph of Silva and the women she saw disembarking from the train. She finds out that those women were athletes, but they were considered missing. Suddenly, someone passes by in the hallway, catching her attention. Curiously, she follows into the place and searches for Josh, but ends up finding a shooting range where there were sights with the tattoos painted on them. Suddenly, the place becomes disturbing as the targets move on their own. Surprisingly, Esther turns on the lights in the location and questions what Marcia is doing there. She explains what she found, which is enough for the police officer, and invites her to talk in her office. At the station, Marcia wants Esther to call the family of the woman whose death she witnessed, but the police officer says that without a body, there is no crime or evidence of what she says. Upset, Marcia asserts that Esther is covering for the countess's people, which makes the atmosphere tense, and the police officer states that her criminal record is increasing, not only due to the theft of a jacket. While they talk, Josh discreetly takes an old book from the table without Esther noticing. The police officer tells the woman to leave and drop the false accusations. When she is inside Josh's car, he shows her the book he took. It contains writings by Hans Badeski, an ancestor of the countess. He was known as the Black Knight, fearless in battle and cruel in tormenting prisoners before their deaths. In the book, they find a paper written by Esther, traces that she is studying the history of Countess Charlotte. Minutes later, Marcia boards the train, but upon noticing that Anna, one of the women seen in the athlete photo, is getting off the locomotive, she questions where the woman is going. Anna responds that she is going to participate in the competition. Asked if she would go with her, she declines. Marcia once again misses the train and sits at the station. This time, she closely examines the area map and forcibly pries it from the glass. Then she discovers something bizarre. She uses her blood to connect the dots and realizes that the entire region forms a star, the same as the tattoo. This means something, so she returns to talk to Josh. She tells him what she discovered, asserting that when she invaded the stable and went underground, she found a network of tunnels that she now knows connects with the 5 formations. What happens there is a type of ancient game, referring to a messenger on the battlefield who was given the order to transport a message. He must have the courage to cross the firing range, and if necessary, when losing his horse would have to run, swim, and even fight if required. Wanting to discover more, they head to the maze of plants. As soon as they enter the location, they hear screams, apparently from Anna in despair. They run to exit the place and end up separating. Anna appears running from a hunting creature in one of the maze's corridors, and Marcia watches as she is caught by the creature. Marcia manages to exit the maze and searches for Josh, but he hasn't come out. Then she follows the creature that takes Anna down into the underground. However, she cannot find them anymore. Minutes later, she arrives at a location where she encounters Rena, who is about to participate in the competition. Marcia enters claiming that she will participate too, and soon puts on her fencing gear. As the bell rings, Marcia warns Rena that the people in charge of the competition will kill her, then leaves in her place and locks her inside. Dressed with a protective mask, Marcia heads to the confrontation site and finds Vani, the overseer of the games. Composing herself, she accepts when Vani trades her fencing sword for a real sword and says the athlete will prove whether she is ready for her fate. After Vani exits, another competitor enters fiercely growling, prepared to kill Marcia. A fight ensues, and Marcia shows weakness, having part of her clothing torn and her sword knocked away. She quickly grabs it, but nearly has her eye pierced, being saved by the iron layer of the mask. When the opponent unmasks her, she delivers a blow that also reveals the creature's face, and this time it is the mechanic Laura, another hunting vampire. Fortunately, Josh appears from a door and drags Marcia inside. They escape from the initial attack and move upward, discovering that they are in the village workshop. When Laura reappears, Marcia defends herself, and with Josh's help, they pin her under a vehicle, buying time to return below and escape. Further along in the tunnels, they find a door and take refuge inside the compartment, evading the creature for a time. In the place, they find more books, including the one Esther was carrying. Marcia picks up a historical book that recounts that the Countess and her 4 allies practiced macabre rituals to achieve eternal life, but were condemned to death for their brutal crimes. However, after a few days, their bodies disappeared. Marcia and Josh continue their underground journey and head toward another point of the pentagram on the map. Meanwhile, Marcia reads the writings in the book and discovers that the church found the Countess and her disciples alive and different, so as a means of establishing a peace agreement, they devised a cunning plan. The church had the Countess sign a disguised document, which was in fact a curse spell, where she and her disciples would be eternally trapped within the area of her possession. Marcia wonders who the last piece is, as she only knows the Countess, possibly dead, and the vampires she previously confronted. Josh tells her to imagine who it might be. Outside the Countess's area, Matthias arrives in the region and encounters the blocked road, so he quickly orders his henchmen to unblock it. Inside the property facilities, Marcia and Josh hide from the man doing the chores. Unfortunately, he ends up locking Josh in one of the rooms upon seeing the open door. Wanting to help her friend, she heads over to the old man who is burning the clothing of the victims and grabs the keys without him noticing. When he picks up Matthias's letter, he breaks the seal and finds some scrolls of writings. Seeing this and confused, Marcia drops the key. When she turns her attention back to where the old man was, she finds he is no longer seated in the chamber. She enters the room to grab the letter, but is surprised by the man, who injures her with a coal stirrer. Marcia defends herself with the small table and, using the last of her strength, fights the old man and knocks him out. Injured, she delivers the keys under the door to Josh and asks him to remain still as creatures are approaching. Marcia climbs to the upper floor and reaches the kitchen of Mrs. Vonnie. She is stunned and terrified to see the lady and the vampire doctor eating human parts. When they spot her, she is blindsided from behind and has her body pierced by a sword. Marcia unfortunately faints, and when she wakes up hours later, she notices that she is back in the torture shed, where Vonnie is there to do horrible things to her and enact what the Countess taught them. Marcia claims that she was told the Countess was dead, but Vonnie says that the young woman should not believe everything that is said to her. Vonnie then hangs Marcia on the hooks and chains, just like the other dead victims, and says that their bodies serve to provide eternal youth and perfect bodies. The secret to their immortality is revealed. However, for the sacrifice, they could not be ordinary people, but rather warriors, who in the present time would be skilled individuals with talents, referred to as athletes. When Marcia knocks over the table and her belongings, Vonnie finds the letter and the papers inside. Upon reading one of them, she questions what Marcia is really doing there, as those would be the documents they had sought for centuries, in order to find a way to escape their imprisonment and turn the world into true chaos and war, where people would seek immortality. After Vonnie's departure, Marcia manages to free herself and jumps into the blood pit below, where the vitality of the victims flows. Down there, she encounters another creature that is regenerating, revealing it is the Countess. She is startled by the old man above her, but manages to escape, and using her strength and taking advantage of the creature's fragility, she destroys part of its head and drowns it in the liquid. Marcia notices a gap in the wall and then begins to pull away the bricks. It isn't long before the retaining wall collapses. After freeing herself, Marcia notices that her wounds begin to heal, showing that she has acquired immortality through that bath. Determined to end her enemies, she ascends to the upper part. Meanwhile, Josh encounters the vampires that surround him. In the next scene, we see the man tied to the chair next to the ritual table, where Vonnie will lead her companions to undo the ritual. Marcia, now immortal, stealthily enters and observes the meeting. Suddenly, the old servant enters and warns them about the destruction of the Countess's bathtub. Desperately, they exit the room. Marcia then enters to free Josh and takes the sacred writings. When she is almost surprised by the vampire Laura, both fight with their skills, using medieval weapons to injure each other. Fortunately for Marcia, Laura's arrogance causes her to lose focus, opening a space for Marcia to hit her with the blades and, using a metal globe, destroy her face, apparently causing her death. She quickly exits the area, takes a horse from the stable, and heads into the forest. It isn't long before the creatures, Vonnie and Helena, pursue her. Luckily, Marcia passes through a trap and pulls it against Vonnie, who is knocked down and falls directly into a pit full of wooden stakes, seemingly causing her death. Helena startles the horse and forces Marcia to leap off the animal. Being near the river, Marcia lures the vampire into the water and goes to the bottom. Underneath, Helena ends up getting caught in the fishing traps and is attacked by carnivorous fish. Esther returns to the castle and finds the scene of death there. Seeing Josh with a blade, she accuses him of the crime, but he denies it. Suddenly, the old servant tries to surprise Esther, but she kills him with a shot. As she exits, she sees Josh being run over by Matthias and his henchwoman. Marcia soon arrives at the scene and is confronted by the man about the documents. Esther, however, takes the papers from both of them. Matthias confronts about the possession of the documents, but Esther, having read his history, issues a warrant for his arrest, but the man does not listen. When his henchwoman tries to run over the police officer, Esther retaliates and shoots, killing the woman. Matthias becomes furious with the police officer's accusations, when suddenly, the Lady Vonnie appears behind him and swiftly kills him. She demands the documents, but Esther shoots at her. At that moment, the other vampires awaken from their apparent deaths. Scared and not understanding this, Esther jumps into Matthias's vehicle and runs over the vampire, leaving the other two behind. Without a ride, they head into the forest, aware that they will be caught before escaping the private area. They head to the boathouse in search of the entrance to the tunnels, which is submerged. Minutes later, they exit through a cave and find the way out, near the shooting range. Soon they find Esther, who came to the place in search of weapons. However, before they can enter the car, the creatures approach the area and force the trio to enter the shooting range. Sometime later, Marcia notices that the vampires are outside waiting for the moment to attack. After reflecting a bit, Josh accuses Esther of being the fourth member of the Countess's pact, stating that she merely pretends to be a police officer after being rejected by the Countess. He then says that she wants the documents for herself, so that only she can escape from the prison. The moment becomes tense as both aim their guns at each other, but Marcia reassures them. She speaks of a plan and says she can be the bait. The trio then prepares the weapons in the shooting range and initiates the plan. Marcia exits and draws the attention of the creatures. Suddenly, the lights go out, and the attack begins. Marcia lures the creatures to the front of the range, where the others begin shooting at the immortal vampires. The barrage of bullets tears apart the creatures, but the shots do not kill them. However, it does delay the beasts. Nevertheless, the three dismembered creatures regroup and form a single deformity. When Marcia goes outside to start the car, she realizes that it is without keys. Meanwhile, Esther runs out of bullets and has only one left from Josh. At this moment, the fourth member is revealed. Josh shoots Esther and takes the documents for himself. Marcia, seeing Josh's truck, enters his cabin in search of the keys, and soon finds them. She stumbles upon a fuel jug and discovers a secret compartment. When she goes to check it, she finds several pieces of what used to be men. It isn't long before she comes face to face with Josh, who has been lying the entire time and is one of the creatures. Josh reveals that he contacted Matthias anonymously so that he would discreetly bring the documents to him, promising a good reward, but Marcia showed up and delayed his plans. Josh explains that he despised his companions, which is why he wanted to leave alone. He then recites the reverse spell while burning himself and thus frees himself from the curse. However, the bestial and horrific creature emerges. Josh hands the other documents to Marcia and tells her to escape. The place begins to burn, and the monstrous creature grabs Josh to kill him. As Marcia is about to leave, she encounters the Countess. The creature is there to seek revenge, and soon presses her against the wall, taking the writings. Seeing the boat's motor on the table, Marcia turns it on and mutilates the creature, along with the destruction of the documents. Marcia grabs the motor as a weapon, but the Countess creature regains her cursed true form and says she will live forever. Not caring, Marcia attacks the monster and completely crushes its head. She then returns to the compartment, and before the mutant monstrosity finishes off Josh, Marcia brutally attacks it with the blades of the motor, completely dismembering the vampires. After defeating such evil, she tries to help Josh, but he is resigned to his fate and allows himself to burn to death. Marcia exits the cabin and observes her immortal enemies continuously burning until they turn to ashes. A few hours later, We see her driving out of the limits of the cursed area, now possessing the immortality that her enemies wanted to have.